Alrighty, good morning everybody. My name is Clarissa Fuller. Thank you all so much for being here today on our virtual countdown event with Freckled Fishing Company. I am the co-founder and CEO of Freckled Fishing Company, and I am so excited to be with you here today. We all are here today to educate ourselves and learn more about climate change and how it's going to affect our future, because I think we all share this same concern about what the future is going to look like for future generations to come, and we all want to try and do our part to better it for these future generations. And that same idea is really what sparked John and I to start Freckled Fin this year in January. We were young people concerned about the future of our climate, and it was starting to become super prevalent to us, and it was getting to the point where we could not avoid it. It was literally smacking us in the face because it was affecting our everyday lives. And we decided that starting Frecklefins Fishing Company was the best way for us to do our part. So a few years ago, probably about 5 years ago, we started going on these trips to Cape Cod in the summer, and we saw that every year after year, there was a big change in the beach over the summer. So we started to look back at, let me just back this up a little bit. Here we go. We started to go, we go to the beach, and the beaches there have these gorgeous cliffs and dunes. And every year we would go and they would be beaten back by winter storms more and more. And you would see that the beaches had to change, or your entrances to the beach would change, or homes were starting to disappear. We would go and we would see more and more erosion. We'd see these lines of blocking people off from climbing up and down them, contributing more to erosion. But we would also see all of this debris everywhere, and we would see wires, and you can see here this pipe hanging out. We saw metal caps in the ocean, concrete pieces, and all of this was remnants of homes that used to be here on the cliffs on these oceanfront properties that are just not existent anymore because of how bad climate change is eroding this beach away. And this was a huge wake-up call to us. It was a big thing that you can't avoid even when you go year after year. It's so prevalent. Even when we would go between June and August, we can totally see the change. And this was really the big wake-up call for us. And then we just started to look harder into what we could see in the context of Cape Cod. So we are a fishing company. We spend a lot of our time fishing. And even in the last 5 years, we've seen a huge change in fishing up at the Cape. We've seen the species change. We've seen fish that are normally more south are starting to migrate north, and the water temperature up north is changing drastically. It is way more prevalent in the north that the water temperature is heating up. And as a result of that, we would normally be catching these fish more inland in the bay, and now we have to get out more towards Billingsgate, out more into the ocean where the water is cooler, because that's where these fish actually want to be. We even feel this difference in the temperature of the ocean as humans. What used to be water that we would not dare get in without a wetsuit, that was absolutely freezing cold, is now water that we would walk into in a bathing suit in mid-June, which is absolutely unheard of. And it's crazy how it's so prevalent even in the last 5 years that we as humans can measure it and see it and recognize it. It's right there in our faces. When we started noticing this in Cape Cod, we would come back to our community here in Alexandria, and we just started to pay attention a little bit more to what was going on around us. And we started seeing trash all along the bridges and along the Mount Vernon running trail. We started to see that it was washing into the Potomac. We started seeing trash in Great Falls National Park. And we just started to notice that, wow, there is so much that we can do right now as people who live in this community. And then when COVID hit, that problem just really escalated itself. We saw a really big crisis of PPE waste as well. We've seen masks and trash not only just in the street, but we see them in the waterways as well, along the Potomac and other things like that. And this waste and the problems with the water in our area are just not prevalent to everyone. And that's obvious to us when we see people fishing in this water. It's really not safe. It's not clean water. It's much better than it was years ago, but it's just not okay for the community to be doing that kind of stuff. So it's so obvious that we are not taking care of this planet that we live on today. And this event is meant to show that the countdown is on. It's literally on. We are running out of time to save this planet, and we need to be doing something about it. So at Freckled Fins, our number one goal is education. Our main goal is educating people on how to help in their own unique way to support climate change. Now, in our context, we mainly focus on ocean conservation as a method of climate action. The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet and is vital to our survival as humans. But the ocean also houses our world's largest ecosystem. Not to mention that the ocean also absorbs a third of the CO2 that we as humans are producing. So the ocean is so important for us. We focus on educating the fishing community about responsible catch and release, fishing waste such as loose lines and nets, and we also encourage fishing and boater safety as well, which is also super important. But we also want to show people that just because we live here in Alexandria, that doesn't mean that our community doesn't affect the larger community that serves the ocean. We live right along a waterway that connects directly to the ocean. We are hugely connected to the Chesapeake Bay, and by not doing the work here in this region, we are missing out on a huge important area that we need to be serving. And it's much more prevalent in somewhere like Cape Cod, where you see that direct impact because you are on the beach. And we notice that along the entire East Coast, it is much more prevalent for people to be much more eco-conscious in communities like Ocean City, Maryland, like the Jersey Shore, all up and down the East Coast. And those communities that sit just back from the water on the East Coast don't notice how much what they do and what their community does also affects that larger community of ocean conservation. The other main thing we also work towards is to keep as much trash out of the oceans as possible. 8.3 million tons of just plastic are discarded into the ocean yearly, and 70% of the debris in the ocean then sinks. So it's extremely hard to get it out once it gets in. And this is a big deal for us in this community and all communities. Your waterways are always connected to the ocean, and once that debris gets in, it's really hard to get it back out. So doing our part to mitigate this now is super important. But because we're such a small business and know there are other amazing organizations out there doing great work along with us as well, we donate almost 50% of our proceeds to other organizations doing their part to combat climate change as well. We do work with organizations that work with climate change and social justice dealing with race issues and things like that. We also donate money to companies that are recycling glass and working to get more trash out of the oceans and keeping it out of the oceans. We work to organize events like beach cleanups, which are not so prevalent now with COVID because we all can't get out there and do that kind of stuff. But doing small bits of work adds up over time. And after today's event, I encourage you to look at how you can take small steps to help combat climate change. Maybe it's as simple as switching to reusable bags. Maybe it's as big as organizing a community waterway cleanup or donating to your favorite organization. But remember that we all have to be doing something because the clock is ticking and we can't afford to run out of time. So thank you so much for having me today, and I will pass it on to our next speaker.